I'm so sorry for the interruption here. We had some technical difficulties on the back end, but we're here now and we're ready to talk about how to get more 5-star reviews. To give you a little introduction, I'm Maddie or Madison, really either goes. I want to get started as quickly as possible, but I just want to give everyone the opportunity to test out the question box to make sure that everybody can use it and that I can read it. So why don't you take a moment and share with me where you're dialing in from. I would love to hear where everybody's calling from today. I've got a couple of messages in here from before, so a couple of people at least have access. Test from Seattle, Washington. Love Seattle. Tampa, I was just in Tampa. Pottstown, that's near where I grew up. I grew up in State College, Pennsylvania. We've got a Philadelphian, go Birds. Mississippi, Boise. Naples, I love Naples. My voice still fading in and out. Got Bob from Philly. Redding, California. Lots of people from the coast. I love it. Okay. I know I usually like to talk a whole bunch when we first get on here, but since we already had a 10-minute delay, I'd like to get started now. Again, I'm Maddie. I am going to be going through how to get more 5-star reviews and stop losing sales to your competitors. Let's dive in. To kick today's webinar off with a couple of housekeeping items for everybody on the call today. Please note that this will be recorded and that will be sent to you along with a copy of the slide deck for you to review after. So no need to take any notes. Also, please note that all of our webinar recordings are available online at WordStream and Local IQ YouTube channels. You can navigate to YouTube and watch any of our past webinars, a lot of good stuff in there to dive in after this call. Also, the reason why I have you all practice using the question box is I want you to feel comfortable typing in your questions throughout the webinar. So be sure to stick any questions in there and we can go over them in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you've attended any of our webinars in the past, you know the Q&A sessions are super fun, they're super unique, they're different every time. So make sure to save some questions for that. See that I'm still fading in and out audio-wise, so I'm going to take a second to just take my headphones out. I'm going to take the silence as a yes. Just let me know if you can't hear me, put it in the question box. Okay, so, oops, went a little too far. Oh no, you can't hear me now. Okay, give me 1 second. Oh, okay, somebody says you can hear me now. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm ahead 1 slide too many. Sorry for all the technical difficulties, guys. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to get us on the same page about who Local IQ is. Some of you might already be working with us, and that's great. We love to have you. But some of you might be totally new, and that's great too. Some of you might be familiar with us through our thought leadership brand, WordStream by Local IQ. So you're probably wondering, how does all of this fit together, right? Local IQ is how businesses like yours can attract and retain ideal customers.
One thing we're really proud of is that we are a premier partner with a lot of major advertising platforms. And you can see by the badges on the bottom of the screen here, we work with Google, Meta. We have all the bells and whistles to help you achieve your goals. This isn't just something granted to any marketing platform out there as well. It's really only given to businesses that display clear campaign success for their customers. Also displaying leadership within the field and meeting a rigorous set of requirements. So we're really proud of that, and we love to leverage that for our clients. And then there's me. A little bit more about me. I know I introduced myself. I'm Maddie. I've got nearly a decade of experience in marketing and sales enablement, as well as a master's degree in digital marketing. Ooh, what is going on with the slides? Holy cow. While I get us back on track, I'm also the content manager for USA Today Network and Local IQ. And I'm based out of Philadelphia. Like I said, again, go Birds. I'm currently in Tucson, Arizona on a little trip, but I'm normally based out of Philadelphia. I'd also like to stay in touch. If you guys want to link up with me on LinkedIn, once I get back to the right slide, for some reason, this is not letting me move. You can find my username on there. It's Maddie Lippincott on LinkedIn. On another one of the slides, since I can't seem to navigate, you'll also find all of the links for our different socials for Local IQ and WordStream. Make sure to go over there, give us a follow. We post daily. We post all different kinds of helpful information about how to help your business succeed. Oh, holy cow, what is going on? I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't seem to have control. Okay, well, oh, here we go. Oh my goodness. Shoot. Okay, well, I can't seem to go back, but I don't want to delay us anymore. This is the first slide of our first section. I'll go over a little bit about what that's going to be like, why reviews matter and work. Reviews are where perception becomes profit. Oh, there we go. Now we're on the right slide. Before we get tactical, I want to start with the bigger picture because reviews are doing a lot more than most businesses realize. For a long time, people relied heavily on search engines, right, to help them make decisions. And we still do that. Search engines are still really important, but the way we discover products and services outside of that has changed quite a bit over the last decade or so. It's not enough to provide people with information anymore. People want reassurance that they're getting the value that they're paying for, which often comes from validation and experiences from real people. I mean, how many times have you asked a friend for a recommendation about a movie, a restaurant, something like that? That's why we're seeing such a major shift toward community-driven platforms like Reddit. review sites, forums, TikTok comments, Facebook groups, I could go on. All of these places where people can directly hear from other consumers. And a lot of us are doing this for ourselves already without even thinking about it. Excuse me, I can tell you truly and honestly that I don't visit a restaurant without checking out the reviews as well as the menu, but that's another story. How about when a new phone comes out? Personally, I'm an iPhone user. Every time we get a new iPhone, we, you know, you gotta look at all the different versions. You gotta compare them. You gotta ask people as well, hey, which version do you have and which one is the best in your opinion? Customers are absolutely doing the same thing. Any business that you own, any type of exchange for goods or services is absolutely going to include the consumer going out and making sure that they're getting what they're paying for. Everything I just talked about is rooted in this idea of social proof. At a basic level, social proof is how people use other people's experiences and behaviors to guide their own decisions. So kind of like the monkey see, monkey do thing that we've been brought up with. When people are uncertain, they naturally look for signals like what are other people choosing? What are they saying? What seems trusted or popular? We all do this constantly, right? Especially because how often we're on the internet, we're on these platforms. Regardless of what we're doing, whether it's picking out a new car or trying to decide what kind of ice cream we want at the end of a long day, this is what we're doing. This is how we're figuring that out, thanks to the community around us. If you're deciding where to eat in a new city, you're probably looking at reviews first. If you're buying something online, ratings are obviously where you're going to go, as well as customer photos. Those are big. But social proof can take a lot of different forms, right? Customer testimonials are one example. Things like videos, written success stories, or case studies that businesses actively collect and share. Online reviews are probably the most familiar to everyone, and they're accessible for most businesses. Those are the ratings and comments people leave publicly on platforms like Google or Yelp. Then you have endorsements, recommendations, or mentions from recognizable people, like an influencer or a celebrity or like a big brand. They already have trust with the audience. So that is a great way to create social proof for your brand. Then there's user-generated content, which the name of it may not sound familiar, but if you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, that is user-generated content. Anybody doing the little showy thing or the clicking around, the skincare stuff, that's also always user-generated content. And finally, we have crowd signals. These are the popularity indicators that people are subconsciously looking for. Things like follower counts, subscriber numbers, views on videos, views on posts, downloads, how many people appear to be engaging with the business. And all of these things help reduce uncertainty and build confidence for people who are looking to make a purchase. You need consistent, authentic customer experiences being reflected publicly online, and that's why reviews have become such a powerful growth tool. Next slide, please. Perfect. One of the biggest shifts happening right now is where people are going to validate their decisions, right? For years, businesses focus almost entirely on traditional search visibility. Think ranking on Google or running display ads or optimizing their websites with SEO. And those things definitely matter still, but customer behavior is evolving every day. They want experiences, opinions, and proof from other people who have already made the decision before them. And that's why platforms like Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, all of the other platforms, the social platforms I mentioned before, have become such an important part of the customer journey. You can see that shift happening directly on this slide, and I'm sure on all of your personal devices as well. On the left, we have a traditional Google search result. That's still often the starting point. We were talking about iPhones before, right? And then on the right is what is increasingly happening. People are going to look for conversations and testimonials on their own. They're probably searching things like, is this actually worth it? Has anyone used this before? What's your experience? That kind of thing. That's because consumers trust real world experiences more than polished marketing language. For a lot of people, myself included, this has become almost autonomous. Holy cow, autonomous. You search for a product, again, let's say an iPhone, and immediately look for a review, but also check Reddit because we have to know which version is best, which is personally the Max. I love the big screen. This behavior is becoming super normal, and it's changing how businesses need to build trust online. And that's because visibility alone isn't going to cut it anymore. A customer might find your business through search, but social proof like reviews, ratings, everything I already talked about, those are often going to be what determine whether or not they choose you over your competitors. Next slide, please. Okay, this stat specifically really hammers home how central reviews have become to modern decision making. 93% of people say online reviews influence their purchasing decisions. And what's important here is that reviews are influencing everything from, your business getting considered, what options feel safest, excuse me, and what companies feel the most trustworthy. And this applies across the board. Any industry involved in selling goods and services is impacted by this. Think restaurants, healthcare providers, contractors, hotels, retail stores, financial institutions, anywhere. People are checking reviews before making a decision in virtually any category. And that's because reviews reduce uncertainty. I think I touched on that a little bit, but I really want to hammer that home. That's the most important part of today's webinar. When someone is considering a business for the first time, there's naturally some hesitation. Will it be worth it? Can I trust them? What has anybody else's experience been? Reviews answer those questions before the business ever gets involved, and consumers are making these judgments at lightning speed. So before you even enter the conversation as a business, people are deciding whether or not they trust you. And that's a lot of pressure. A weak profile, outdated listings, unanswered reviews can create even more hesitation almost immediately and on a hair trigger, send people away. What's also intriguing is that people aren't just looking at the overall star rating anymore. They're reading comments, looking at recency, which is really important. We'll talk about that a little bit more. They're checking how businesses respond, pin that because that's important as well. And they're also trying to figure out whether the experience feels authentic and consistent. I did just see someone in the chat mention something about authenticity, and I completely agree. If you're, okay, I won't go on a tangent because we'll touch on this later. But yes, authenticity is super important. Reviews have become much more than a nice to have credibility signal. And for most businesses nowadays, they've become one of the best filters and the first filters customers use when deciding whether or not to move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, let's think about how powerful personal recommendations can be. They are super impactful. If a friend tells you, you have to try this restaurant, or I had a really great experience with this company, that instantly changes how you feel about that business, right? There's already trust there before you even interact with them yourselves. Online reviews are now creating that same effect, but on a much larger scale. People are using reviews to try to predict their own experience and what that's going to look like for them. They're probably asking themselves, do people seem genuinely happy with this? Is the business reliable? If something goes wrong, do they actually care, right? And customers are reading between the lines more than ever. They're scanning comments, they're sussing out patterns between the reviews and comments, checking the dates, paying attention to how the business responds, if they do at all. And we'll get more into that later because that's crucial. That's why authenticity, again, we're on the right path. matters so much in reputation management. A profile with thoughtful responses, recent activity, and realistic feedback tends to feel more trustworthy than something that looks overly polished or inactive. Most people don't expect businesses to be perfect, and you'll hear me say that more than once, because it's not about all or nothing. It's about creating a pattern, of consistency. What they do expect, again, is consistency, professionalism, and evidence that real people are having good experiences. And when they see that, trust starts building before the process even begins. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. One of the biggest mistakes that we see businesses making is assuming that a few good reviews are enough. But people are looking for more than just positivity. They want consistency. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but consistency is key. Think about your own behavior for a second. If you found a business with only 1 or 2 reviews, even if they were 5-star reviews, you'd probably still hesitate a little bit because it doesn't feel like enough information yet. Now, let's compare that to a business with dozens of reviews describing similar positive experiences. That starts to feel reliable. That starts to feel predictable. It's established. The business on the slide is a good example of that. They've got thousands of reviews. They don't have a perfect 5-star review overall, but a 4.8 shows that there have been mixed experiences. Most of them have been good. Once customers see multiple people reinforcing the same experience, confidence starts building quickly. That's why there's such a dramatic increase in purchase likelihood once businesses reach even a small foundation of reviews. Creates social validation. It tells potential customers, hey, other people are choosing this business and they're having a good experience. And another thing that's super important here is momentum. People naturally trust businesses that appear active and consistently engaged with customers. A steady stream of reviews signals that the business is active, customers are continuing to choose them, and the experience is staying consistent over time. So when we talk about rep management, the goal is creating a consistent flow of customer feedback that reinforces that trust over time, rather than getting a handful of positive reviews and calling it a day. Next slide, please. Oh, I already see so many good questions in the chat, you guys. I can't wait to get to the Q&A. Okay, so volume is important when it comes to building confidence. And as we touched on briefly on the last slide, it's also crucial for building reputation that directly impacts revenue. Customers are willing to spend more with businesses that have strong online reputations, up to 22% more. I know that sounds goofy. No one wants to pay more for stuff, especially right now, but essentially people are willing to pay more when they feel more confident, when they believe that the value of what they're paying for is there. A strong reputation reduces uncertainty. Again, it makes customers feel like the business is reliable, other people are having a good time there, and that you probably will too. Once trust is established, price becomes less of a deciding factor. That especially is important in competitive industries where multiple businesses might offer very similar products or services. Think retail, that's like a big thing for the retail industry. At that point, reputation becomes sort of a differentiator. Consumers naturally gravitate towards businesses that feel established and responsive and trusted by others, obviously. One thing that's really important to point out here is that reputation compounds over time. Every positive interaction that your business has, every thoughtful response, every recent review adds another layer of trust for potential customers. That momentum continues to build on itself. So when we talk about online reputation, we're not just talking about appearances or vanity metrics. We're talking about something that directly influences customer confidence and revenue. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the most overlooked parts of rep management is recency. Sorry, the problems have really tripped me up. I'm stumbling over my words. A business can have a great overall rating. If the newest review is old, though, customers start asking questions almost immediately. When people read reviews, they're wondering if the business is still active, if people are still having good experiences, and whether the quality has changed. Consumers naturally look for signs that the information they're seeing is current. If you want to take a look at the reviews on the screen, you can see that all but one is considered a recent review. That window is about 3 months from the current date. So anything from the past 3 months is going to be working extra hard in your favor. If you're comparing two businesses with similar ratings, but one has reviews from last week and the other one hasn't been reviewed in 8 months, you'd probably trust the more active business more instinctively. Fresh reviews signal that customers are still engaging with the business, they are having an experience that's relatively consistent, and the company is still active and operating at a high level. And the freshness of that matters for another reason. Buying behavior changes quickly, especially in today's day and age. Customers want reassurance that what they're reading still reflects the current experience, not what the business was like, a year ago or something. That's why reputation management can't be something businesses focus on just once. It can't be a one-time project. It has to be ongoing. The steady stream of recent reviews is one of the strongest trust signals a business can build online. Next slide, please. At this point, hopefully you can start to see that reviews aren't just sitting passively on a profile page somewhere. They are definitely influencing multiple stages of the customer journey at the same time. First, they build trust. We've talked about that. We know this is a big trust lever. When people are seeing recent, authentic, consistent feedback from other customers, they feel more confident engaging with the business. That trust then influences their behavior. People are more likely to click on your listing, view your website, reach out, book something, buy something. Over time, that creates a measurable impact on conversions and revenue. That's why I really want to move away from thinking about reviews as a reputation metric. They're more of a business growth tool because visibility alone isn't going to be enough anymore. A business can show up in search results, but if customers don't trust what they see, they won't take the next step, which is, the most important step. Reviews can bridge that gap with between visibility and action. They create reassurance at the exact moment that customers are deciding whether to move forward, the most crucial moment in the customer journey. And this becomes especially important in competitive industries, again, where businesses may offer very similar things. The business with strong reviews, more recent feedback, and more visible customer engagement usually feels safer and more trustworthy to consumers. And when trust goes up, conversion rates go up, everybody's happy. So as we move into the next section here, we're going to shift from understanding why reviews matter into the tactical side of how businesses can actively strengthen and manage that reputation over time. Let's start with a pop quiz, taking us back to middle school days. I want everybody to take advantage of the chat box. What percentage of consumers won't trust a local business unless their online listing information is correct? Thinking about all the different things that you would see on, say, Google Maps if you look for something. While you're putting your guesses in there, I want to explain why this matters so much. Before people can leave reviews, they have to become customers first. And before they become customers, they have to trust the business enough to take that first step. That trust starts forming way earlier than most businesses realize. It starts when someone searches for your business online and sees your hours, your phone number, address, website, all the typical things that, again, would be listed in like Google Maps, Apple Maps, anywhere that you would look up a business. If any of that information is outdated, inconsistent, missing, it immediately creates friction and uncertainty. And consumers are incredibly sensitive to those trust signals right now. That's point in their consumer journey. Let's take a look at some of the answers in here. Oh, a lot of you guys are really close. We've got 80, 93, 45, 60 to 70, 95, 62. Like I said, most of you guys are very, very close. The answer is actually 73%. Nearly 3/4 of consumers say that they won't trust a business unless their online listing information is correct. That's huge because it means rep management isn't just about the reviews, right? It starts with the foundation of your online presence. If your listings are inaccurate or neglected, you could be losing trust before a customer even reaches the review stage. That's exactly why business listings, are such an important part of the online rep management strategy overall. Someone did just make a really, really good comment. It depends on your area. Absolutely. If you're living in a small town, business owners are, like you said, are older, may not know how to use Google business listings. I come from a very, very small town, just a few thousand people. I totally understand. My favorite Italian restaurant has a 2.1 star rating. So I get it. It's important. And I'm not quite sure how to address that particular situation exactly, but it's definitely worth noting. Let's take a look at our next slide. This is where listings become incredibly important to the overall reputation conversation. When most people think about rep management, they think about reviews first. But listings, like I said, are really the foundation underneath all of that. Because your business information is showing up in a lot more places than most businesses realize, it's not just Google anymore. Your information is being distributed across all kinds of places now, including, but definitely not limited to, search engines, maps, social platforms, voice assistants, online directories, publisher networks, countless third-party platforms. Customers expect all of that information to be accurate all the time, but you may not even know your business is listed somewhere. But it's important that you track it down. If someone sees different hours on Google versus on Yelp, if a phone number is outdated, if the address is wrong, that immediately creates hesitation. And that hesitation is dangerous online because consumers make trust decisions super fast, faster than you can Google something. That's why accurate listings impact so much more than visibility. They directly influence whether customers trust a business, whether they engage with it, and ultimately whether they convert. So this is also why listings and review work hand in hand. Listings help customers find and trust businesses in the first place. Reviews then reinforce whether choosing that business feels like the right decision. And together, those things have a direct impact on revenue. If customers can't confidently find or trust your business online, they may never make it far enough to actually purchase from your business and leave a review. Let's take a look at the next slide. Thank you. At this point, the challenge is definitely becoming scale, right? Once you realize how many platforms your business information can appear on, managing it manually starts to become really difficult and I'm sure overwhelming. And that's where having a centralized listing solution becomes invaluable. The goal here isn't just like being listed online. It's making sure that your information stays accurate, consistent across all kinds of platforms, updated anytime you change any small detail about your business and how people can interact with it, and that it remains visible across all the places your customers are searching. All of these signals influence trust and discoverability. A rich, complete business profile with accurate information, photos, reviews, and active engagement has a much stronger chance of showing up in local search results. And consistency matters as well. Google pays attention to whether your business information aligns across the web. If your listings are incomplete or inconsistent, it can impact visibility in places like Google Maps. That's an example I've given a couple of times. Can you tell that I use it a lot? It also impacts local search results, the Google local 3-pack, all kinds of places will be impacted by that. Those placements are super important because that's where high intent local discovery often happens. One stat I always think is interesting here is that nearly half of all Google searches have local intent. I know that we were just touching on that in the chat. That means a huge percentage of people are searching online, are actively looking for businesses that are right near them. So listings aren't just a maintenance task, they're directly connected to local visibility and customer acquisition. And what you're seeing on the slide here is what centralized management can actually look like in practice. Instead of manually updating dozens of platforms individually, businesses can manage that ecosystem from one place. You can monitor listing status, push updates from across all different kinds of platforms, identify incomplete profiles, and maintain consistency overall. That reality is that most businesses don't struggle with understanding why listings matter. Obviously, we know how important it is to be able to be found. Discovery is, the crucial first step of the consumer journey. What it is that they struggle with is keeping everything accurate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next few slides. Okay, one of the biggest misconceptions around reviews is that customers need to be motivated to leave them. In reality, most people are actually super willing and understanding by that ask. They just need to be prompted. And 76% of people will leave a review if you prompt them. So for a lot of businesses, the issue isn't customer satisfaction. It's simply that there's no consistent process for prompting people. And when businesses don't ask, what usually happens is their online reputation becomes shaped by a very small percentage of customers that are at the tail ends of the spectrum, very, very happy people and very, very not happy people. Meanwhile, the majority of positive experiences never get reflected online at all. What creates an incomplete picture of the business is the fact that we're only seeing two very opposite sides of the spectrum and not all of the very crucial in between. People are using reviews to decide whether a business feels reliable, whether the experience is consistent, right? We've talked about this a couple of times, and whether they feel comfortable taking the next step. So to alienate people before that can even happen is going to send a lot of your revenue away. So when businesses consistently ask for reviews, they're not gaming the system. They're simply creating a more accurate representation of the customer experience they're already delivering every day. And once again, I know I haven't said it enough, consistency is important and it compounds. More reviews create more trust, and more trust increases confidence, and that increased confidence directly impacts conversion behavior and revenue. This is also why businesses with stronger reputations are often able to command higher pricing. When customers feel more certain about the quality of the experience, they become less price sensitive because they know that they're paying for value. And one thing I really want to emphasize here is that asking doesn't need to feel awkward or overly salesy. In most cases, happy customers are just glad to have the support. They just need the opportunity and the reminder to actually do that. Let's look at the next slide. Timing is one of the most important parts of that process, right? And thankfully, one of the easiest things for businesses to improve. The best time to ask for a review is at the moment of satisfaction. Think like right after a successful interaction in a store, right after they give you a compliment on your services. Basically, when the customer is already feeling positive about the experience, that's when you should be asking. That's because emotion plays a huge role in the follow-up. If someone is actively feeling happy, relieved, excited, overall positive about their experience, they're much more likely to take action in the moment. But if too much time passes, that momentum fades. Look at Tyndall Ford here as an example. They sent a short, clear, direct link right to the customer's phone, catching them while the experience is still fresh. That's the sweet spot. Unfortunately, this is another place where businesses often overlooked. Most customers don't mind being asked for feedback, especially after a genuinely positive experience. The key here is making it feel natural and making it incredibly easy to follow through. Next slide, please, where we're going to talk about where to ask. One thing I really want to emphasize is that there's no single perfect place to ask for reviews. The best strategy is usually the one that fits naturally into the customer experience you already have. Some customers will respond best in person. Others are much more likely to leave a review if they get a quick text message like we saw on the last slide. The business that tends to build strong review momentum is usually the one making review requests part of the overall customer journey, not a one-time effort that only happens occasionally. And the nice thing is, these asks don't need to feel disruptive or overly formal. Again, there are a lot of different ways: in person, by text, by phone, email, through your website, in post-purchase communications like a receipt. Anything like that is going to feel natural. What matters is making the process consistent and easy, because the easier you make it to leave feedback, the more likely customers are to actually follow through. Let's talk about how to ask on the next slide. Overthinking the actual ask itself holds a lot of businesses back, in my professional opinion. People worry about sounding awkward or pushy or scripted. And in reality, the most effective review requests are usually the simplest and most human. You got to make it personal. You got to make it natural. And you got to explain why the feedback matters. In person, the best opportunities usually happen when a customer is already expressing satisfaction. If someone tells you, oh, we really enjoyed this experience, and they give you a lot of additional extra information, you can easily ask, hey, we really love the feedback. Would you mind writing it down for us in a Google review? That's just like a natural piece of the conversation, because they're already telling you how happy they are. What's one more step in writing it down? By text, we've already gone over this. You can send it. This will reduce friction because people usually can respond very quickly. A lot of people are on their phones 24/7 anyway. And that's why calling on the phone is an additional super easy way to collect feedback. Review requests often feel very authentic because that human-to-human connection with your voice over the phone breaks down a little bit of the awkwardness. And what I really want to emphasize here is that businesses should avoid sounding overly scripted or transactional. Customers can tell when something feels canned. So sometimes simply saying reviews really help other customers feel confident choosing us. That can make people feel more willing to take the extra step because it feels authentic, and you don't sound too proud to ask for a favor. I want to talk a little bit about email on the next slide. It's one of the easiest ways to make review collection more consistent because it can become part of your workflow that you already have in place. And the biggest advantage here is scalability. Instead of relying on employees to remember to ask every single time, businesses can build review requests directly into their follow-up process. As you can see on the screen here, this is a look. This is showing an example of how businesses can automate and manage that process through tools like our Dash platform. With something like Dash, businesses can create review collection templates, automate follow-up emails, and track customer engagement all in one place. So instead of manually sending those requests out one at a time every time you have an interaction, the process becomes much more streamlined and repeatable. And most businesses aren't struggling with understanding that reviews matter. They're probably struggling with finding the time to manage everything consistently while also running a business. I also want to take a look at how asking on your website can work. That's another super valuable opportunity for review collection. It's one that a lot of businesses are overlooking for some reason. If someone is already visiting your website, there's a good chance they already have some level of familiarity with your business. Maybe they've worked with you before, or they're, following up on a recommendation from your friend or something like that. That makes your website a really natural place to encourage feedback. And the nice thing is this doesn't need to be overly complicated. Simple additions like a leave a review button, review prompts on your thank you page, even a pop-up that comes up whenever people enter the website. The goal really is just visibility and accessibility. So your website becomes both a place to collect reviews and a place to reinforce trust using the reviews that you already have. Again, what we're really talking about throughout this session is reducing friction, right? The easier and more natural the process feels, the more likely customers are to actually follow through. Let's move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about post-purchase comms. Turning review collection into part of your post-purchase experience is a super effective way as well to build momentum long-term, because at that point, the interaction is already happening. The customer has made the purchase, completed the service, what have you. So instead of treating reviews like a separate marketing effort, they become a natural continuation of the customer journey. If someone had a positive experience and you reach out shortly after, there's still an emotional connection, like I said before, and momentum there. That's why post-purchase review requests tend to perform really well across all kinds of industries: e-commerce, hospitality, healthcare, and other experience-driven businesses. What they, you can see on the slide, approach on this can happen in a lot of different ways. You can send a follow-up email, a text message, QR codes are really big, even thank you cards in the mail. What all of those have in common is that the ask feels connected to the experience itself, and it remains consistent across all of your channels. Once businesses build review requests into their post-purchase workflows, the process becomes scalable instead of manual. Take a quick look at the next slide. I want to go over a couple of things to avoid. Reputation management only works when customers trust that the feedback they're seeing is authentic, and customers are getting really good at spotting the things that feel manipulated or unnatural online. That's why businesses should avoid tactics like buying reviews, offering gifts or discounts specifically in exchange for positive reviews, or selectively filtering only happy customers to review requests. Not only can those practices violate platform policies, but they can also damage trust long-term if customers start questioning the legitimacy of the feedback. I know we had a couple of questions in here about that. Consumers are significantly more likely to trust and use businesses that actively respond to reviews. Silence sends a message as well. It is an answer. If customers see unresolved complaints with no response, they start making assumptions like, does the business actually care? Would they respond if I had an issue? Is anyone actually paying attention? That can all damage your reputation. And that's why rep management isn't about trying to control every review. It's about showing customers that you're accountable and engaged. Sometimes a thoughtful response to a negative review can actually build more trust than dozens of positive ones. Okay, I know we're at time. Anyone that would like to stick around, I've got a few more slides about how to respond and build trust. And I would love to go over that with you. Up until now, I know I've talked a lot about generating reviews and strengthening visibility. But right now, let's talk about why responses matter so much. Today, reviews are much more than a one-way feedback loop. Customers are paying attention to the entire interaction, including how businesses respond publicly. 97% of people who read reviews also read the business responses. So that means your response is no longer just about the original customer. Future customers are reading those interactions and trying to understand what kind of business you are, how you handle problems, and whether customers are likely to feel supported if something goes wrong. Most people are often surprisingly reasonable. And that's where we go to our next stat. Another thing to consider here is 40% of people are just looking for an apology. If something goes wrong, we know businesses, people are not perfect. And most people, well, not technically not most, 40% of people can see through that. The fact that they're feeling heard, they know that the business is taking accountability will likely turn into a repeat customer opportunity. Thoughtful engagement can completely change the tone of the interaction as well. And then we get to the business impact side of things. Businesses that actively respond to reviews tend to drive significantly higher customer spending, as much as 50% more. That responsiveness creates reassurance by signaling that you're active, that you care, that you're paying attention, and that you're willing to go the extra mile to mend that relationship with a customer. If an issue happens, there's a good chance someone will actually help resolve it. That's the message that you're trying to send. A thoughtful, timely, authentic response almost always performs better than something that feels corporate, robotic, or defensive. Take a look at the next slide. The role of negative reviews. This is usually the point in the conversation where people get a little uncomfortable because nobody wants negative feedback. But the reality is negative reviews are not automatically harmful. So when people see a profile with nothing but flawless 5-star reviews and no criticism whatsoever, it can sometimes feel a little suspicious or overly curated. I'm sure that we can all recall a time that we've looked up a business and felt a little suspicious. What customers are really looking for is authenticity. They want to understand what the actual experience is, whether problems seem occasional or if it's a consistent issue, as well as how businesses respond when something doesn't go perfectly. That last part is especially important. Negative reviews create an opportunity for businesses to publicly demonstrate professionalism, to publicly demonstrate accountability, and showcase their level of customer care. Future customers are absolutely paying attention to that. A thoughtful response to criticism can completely change how someone perceives the business. What damages trust in all reality is when reviews are ignored or dismissed or just left with no response. That's why rep management isn't about trying to eliminate negativity. It's about managing the overall perception of the business over time. Speaking of responses, let's take a look at what consumers are expecting in terms of responses. At this point, consumers have developed pretty clear expectations. They're not just about whether you respond, that's a given at this point. They're about how you respond. The first thing that customers look for, can anybody finish my sentence? Is consistency. If a business only responds occasionally or only responds to just positive reviews, it creates an uneven experience and people will definitely notice that. Next is speed. Now that doesn't mean businesses need to be online 24/7, responding within 5 minutes. Customers do expect some level of timeliness though. Generally speaking, responding within 24 to 48 hours is a good benchmark. Tone matters as well. It actually is probably one of the more important factors here. And this is where a lot of businesses actually hurt themselves. People can tell immediately when a response feels defensive or copy and pasted. The most effective responses usually feel calm and human, professional. But that doesn't mean every response needs to be a long, 500-word, overly polished piece of work. In fact, shorter and more authentic is better. And finally, we have accountability. Customers understand that mistakes happen. What frustrates people the most, though, is when businesses ignore recurring concerns or refuse to acknowledge obvious issues. Ultimately, businesses aren't just responding to reviews for the original reviewer, they're responding for the future consumer who reads that interaction later. On the next slide, I am going to show you guys a simple formula for putting together a response. One thing that I want to make super obvious is that responding to reviews does not require some perfectly polished customer service script. In fact, overly templated things can sometimes do more harm than good. If every response sounds identical, customers pick up on that super quickly. What works best is having a simple framework. And you can see that on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is a really good example of how this business responded to a negative review with this formula. First, we want to thank the customer. Whether the review is positive or negative, the person still took the time to leave that feedback, which is critical. Any feedback can be utilized and worked on. Next, we want to acknowledge the feedback itself. The more specificity here, the better. This is especially important for negative reviews. We want to make people feel heard. Then we need to address that issue or highlight the positive experience if the review was favorable. This is where we need to get ultra specific. The strongest responses reference something real from the review. And then lastly, we need to move forward. Maybe that means offering to continue the conversation privately or explaining how the issue is being addressed. The goal here is progress, not perfection. And this example is a really good illustration of that balance. Ultimately, review responses are public demonstrations of customer service, and future customers are relying on that, especially if you want them to convert. Let's look at our last slide here. This is another good example. I think it really shows something important. A good response just needs to feel genuine. This review is fairly critical. The customer clearly had frustrations with the atmosphere and overall experience. But what's interesting is that the business doesn't argue, they don't get defensive, and they don't try to invalidate the customer's experience. Instead, they acknowledge the issue, they explain context, and they invite the customer back in a super respectful way. People want to feel like there are actual humans paying attention behind the business, and future customers are often evaluating the response more for that reason. A thoughtful response can completely soften the impact of negative feedback because it demonstrates professionalism and care. You're not just responding to one unhappy customer, you're shaping the perception of everyone else that is ever going to interact with your business on that platform. Thank you for hanging in with me, guys. I want to go over a few key takeaways. I know we talked about a lot. There's a lot of good info in here, and I had to speed through a couple of these slides. So please take the time to review the slide deck and the recording after this. First, reviews influence every stage of the customer decision process. They impact visibility, trust, clicks, conversions. Ultimately, it all comes down to revenue, right? Consistency. I've said it 100 times. Consistency matters more than perfection. Businesses don't need flawless ratings. That's not the point. What customers are really looking for is evidence that the business is active, responsive, and authentic. Finally, reputation is built publicly now. Customers are evaluating businesses long before they ever make direct contact. So every interaction online contributes to the overall perception of the business. I totally get that that can feel intimidating, but it's also a huge opportunity because businesses that consistently show up, engage authentically, and make trust a priority are putting themselves in a really strong position moving forward. All of that being said, one more slide here. I want to leave you with one final thought. A lot of what we covered today sounds simple conceptually, but in practice, rep management can become difficult to manage consistently, especially when businesses are already juggling 100 different things, right? One of the biggest challenges is that many businesses don't fully realize how they're showing up online from a customer's perspective. And that's why we're offering a free digital marketing assessment. This gives businesses like yours the opportunity to understand how their reputation currently looks online, what opportunities there are for improvement, and how to strengthen the trust of your customer base. The nice thing is this isn't about throwing random marketing tactics at the wall. It's really about building a stronger digital presence strategically over time. So if today's conversation sparked some ideas or made you realize that there are maybe some areas worth improving, we would love to help you take a closer look. And if not, that's okay too. Hopefully you're leaving today with practical ideas you can start implementing immediately and strengthen your online reputation and customer trust moving forward. Guys, it has been absolutely a pleasure. I know that I have not gotten to any of the comments or questions in here. We are way over time. I do apologize. I really would love to encourage you to get in touch with me. I put my LinkedIn information in here. Please get in touch with me. I'd love to answer your question through that platform and make sure that you get the response that you deserve. Again, I apologize for all the technical difficulties. It's been a wonderful time hanging out with you guys today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.